What is going on, everyone? My name's Ken, also known as Wiltshire, and welcome to a new video. So in one of my previous videos, I modified a Dell Optiplex 3040 into a gaming PC with a windowed side panel. And a lot of you had some good suggestions on how to improve this build here. So that's what I'll be doing today, is I'll be going through that entire comment section of that video and picking out my favorite suggestions and implementing them in this computer build. So let's get right to the suggestions. All right, so I've gone through the comment section of the previous video, and there is one suggestion that stands out to me the most that you guys suggested. Like BuckyCat suggested here, nice video. I'm glad you liked the video, by the way, BuckyCat, thank you very much. Can you use the leftover parts you cut out to make a cover / shroud for the rat's nest of cables? First of all, thank you for the suggestion, and what BuckyCat is referring to is the bottom portion of this computer case here. I dubbed it the rat's nest because it is a actual rat's nest. There's cables everywhere. It's not very eye-pleasing. It's just spaghetti coming out of that power supply, and there is no room for me to cable manage properly in this case, obviously because there's no back tray that I can route the cables behind. So that suggestion of using a power supply cable is actually a very good suggestion, and we will be using that. However, the metal aluminum sheet that I cut out of the side panel, I don't think I'll be reusing that for the cover supply, or the power supply cover rather. It is a good suggestion to reuse materials, and I do like that. However, it is metal and it has the possibility of grinding out the components inside the computer case. So what I'll be doing is I'll be using a plastic 3D printed power supply cover. And I got this from v1tech.com. You guys can visit that website if you're interested in buying something like this. And I originally bought this from my friend's Corsair 750D, and he never ended up using it, so he gave it back to me. And I've marked out some cut lines here, and I've measured everything, and we're going to cut this to fit inside the Dell OptiFlex build that is sitting next to me. So that is going to be the first implementation of your guys' suggestions that we'll be doing today in this video. But before we get into that, I am going to have to, unfortunately, take apart the entire computer build here, because there are some other suggestions that require me to obviously take everything out, and it's much easier to work on the computer case and cut holes. Obviously, I don't want metal shavings on the computer components because that also will short out the component. So this has to be taken apart, unfortunately, so we're going to do that right now, but I am going to leave the power supply and the cables hooked up so you guys get an accurate representation of what the power supply cover shroud is going to look like once the build is complete. So let's get into disassembling this guy first, and then we'll get into cutting the power supply shroud. All right, so the power supply cover is now inside the OptiFlex, and it looks really good. Took me a bit of time to get the measurements correct because I was off. I didn't accommodate for the case folding inward with the fan on the front, so I had to cut a small slot on the front of the power supply cover, but everything's gonna work out great. And the good thing about that is that the fan will intake some nice, cool, fresh air, and then this guy will funnel it into the intake of the power supply and then out the back, which is great. And what I'm going to do, and this is my own suggestion here, is I'm going to put a second fan at the top here. You may have noticed that I had it in the beginning of the video screwed into the case, but I need to cut out the hole inside the case to get some more air in there. So we're going to do that next. What we're also going to do, and this leads me into the next suggestion that you guys had, and it was about the power supply on the back of the case here. So Brian pointed out, it looks like the power supply's back vent is blocked by the exterior of the case. This means the PSU can't exhaust, trapping its heat. And Brian, you are absolutely correct. So this needs to be cut out, and we're going to do that next while I'm also cutting out the front fan of the front panel of the case there. So we're going to do that as well. And Ben JBK also pointed out that the GPU seems to be sucking, or rather exhausting its hot air into the intake of the power supply. And you're correct, Ben, because that is the kind of style of cooler on a GPU that circulates the hot air in the case rather than sucking in the hot air, running it through the GPU and then out the back, which is known as a blower style cooler. So we're gonna have to flip the orientation of the power supply fan upside down so the fan is facing downward, not upward. And I'm going to drill some holes on the bottom of the case to get some fresh intake there too. So we got two sources of fresh air coming in for the power supply, which is the front of the computer case, and then obviously the bottom. So we're going to do that next. Thank you guys for the suggestions, Brian and Ben. We'll be implementing that next. So let's get to cutting the front fan in the front panel of the case and the power supply and drilling a few holes in the bottom. Okay, so with those cuts made on the OptiFlex, we are now in the home stretch. I have one more suggestion that I'll be using from you guys in the comment section, but I'm going to show you guys my own suggestion here, which was putting another intake fan on the front. So you can see it actually turned out quite well. The cuts are kind of rough, but I'm not going to really spruce them up a bit or file them down anymore because the front panel will be going on the front of the computer and you won't be seeing my ugly cuts. So as long as I get some airflow coming in, that's all I care about. As for the power supply cut for the back of the power supply, you can see that that turned out quite well as well. I'm actually going to move my glasses out of the way. So you can see the power supply is great now. All four screws are in. We have the access to the switch and the plug. There is no vent that is covered on the back of the SF600 from Corsair. And that is pretty much going to lead me into the final suggestion, which would be, according to Mackin for the win, he recommended that I get a decent grinder, but I like to use the Dremel just because it's more slow and methodical and I can get more precise cuts with it. But he recommended that I paint the inside of the case black. Cable also recommended that I paint the inside of the case instead of it being silver. So that is going to be the next thing that we're going to do, is we're going to be painting the interior of this case black, matte finish black, probably around the same color as the power supply shroud or cover. So that is going to be the final suggestion. However, we got a few things in the mail as I was cutting the OptiFlex in the front panel. So we got the premium braided or paracord cables from Corsair, which is specifically designed for the SF600 and the SF450 power supply. So we got the official cables from Corsair there. And I've got a 3 PWM fan splitter. So I'm going to need to use a fan splitter because there's only 2 fan headers on the motherboard for the OptiFlex. And that is the CPU fan and obviously the rear case fan here. So I have to split that into 3. So the 2 front fans will be connected to a splitter as well as the one in the back. And then obviously the CPU fans will be connected to the CPU fan header. So that is going to be the plan. That is going to be the last step. And I'm going to get to masking this guy off here. And then we're going to paint the inside black, reassemble the computer, and I'll be back once again with the finished build. So this is going to be a little awkward. I forgot to hit the record button on the camera when I was painting the Dell Optiplex case. So you guys unfortunately aren't going to see me in action painting the case because, again, I forgot to hit the record button. I was in a little bit of a rush when painting the case, but the paint that I went with was Rust-Oleum's 2x Ultra Cover Paint Plus Primer. I went with the flat black. So if you guys are wondering what paint I used for the case, that would be the paint right here that I used. But again, it came out really good. I'm actually very, very happy with the way it looks. You guys definitely had the right call on making the case black instead of leaving it silver on the inside. I'm actually a big fan of how it looks. So with that said, guys, and again, I apologize that you guys aren't going to be able to see me paint the case. But now that it is painted, we are going to finish and assemble the build, and then we'll see if she boots up after manhandling the crap out of it. Okay, so after spending pretty much all freaking night trying to cable manage the OptiFlex, I finally managed to do it. Everything's in there. Everything looks great. The braided paracord cables from Corsair definitely did help in this situation. Trying to cram everything underneath the power supply cover. It actually worked out really well. The power supply cover looks excellent inside the computer case. Covers everything that I needed to do. The heatsink actually does a really good job. It's a lot better than the previous one from Arctic that I had in there. Believe it or not, something from AliExpress is actually better than a known brand. That blew my mind, but it works really good. I got the RGB heatsinks from Easy DIY Fab on the 2 RAM sticks there, so we get 16 gigabytes of DDR3L in the computer. I had these heatsinks left over from a previous tutorial. I had an RGBify your RAM, so I decided to use them in this computer build because they were sitting in the box. I would unfold the case to show you guys the front fan that I added as well, but me unfolding the case would unfortunately cause problems because the way I cable managed everything. I just pretty much stuffed some of the cables up in the top. But the paint for the OptiFlex turned out really good. If you really want to match the OptiFlex colors or any kind of OptiPlex build, try Rust-Oleum's 2x cover, ultra cover in flat black. It worked out amazing. So with that said, guys, that's going to end off the OptiFlex series. I'm pretty much beating a dead horse at this point with this guy here. So that is going to be the final video on the Dell Optiplex 3040 or OptiFlex as I've called it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video series. If you guys want to see the previous videos that were in this series, they are in the description below. You can find them in a playlist. But my name's Kennel Wiltshire. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care, guys.